Hello, and thank you for stopping by the 741 channel. This video will document the installation of the idler arm and idler arm bracket on this 2004 Chevy Tahoe. This video is part of a series documenting removal and replacement of the Pitman arm, idler arm assembly, and inner and outer tie rods on this truck. If you'd like to see any of the other videos in this series, you'll find links in the video description below, and I'll also have thumbnails at the end of the video that you can click on. I'm over here at the bench, and I've got the idler arm bracket out of the box. This happens to be a Moog Case 6723 part, and this works for my 2004 Z71 Tahoe. Now in the box, of course, is the bracket itself. So this comes with a couple of new nuts here that you can see, and it also comes with this extended grease fitting. Now over here on the top of the idler arm is a grease nipple, and I guess in some vehicles this may not be accessible. In my vehicle, it looks like when it's in installed condition this is accessible with a grease gun, so I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to change it. But you could swap out the grease fitting with this hose, which would connect in. There's a 90-degree adapter here that would screw in where the grease fitting is, and then this hose would route down below the truck and would then take an existing bolt that is on I think the sway bar link. You would take a bolt out, put it through this hole here in this bracket, and then reinstall it, and you can see there's a grease fitting there that you could use. So if in your vehicle this grease fitting is not accessible, this would allow it to be accessible. But again, I'm not going to use this, I'm not going to need it, so I'm going to set it aside and just install the bracket as is. Next up, I have the idler arm itself over here. This is also a Moog part number K6534HD. So this is the idler arm, as you can see. This end will mount onto the bracket, and this end will mount into the center link in the truck. And then of course it comes with new hardware. Looks like a couple of nuts, a grease fitting, and a foam bushing for the tapered end that goes into the center link. One thing here that I forgot to do, and everybody probably noticed this, but I forgot to put the grease fitting in the top of the idler arm. So what you're looking at here is I've got the idler arm bracket mounted in my vise, and I've got the idler arm itself just placed over the taper. Now the instructions talk about using a tool to seat this arm down on the taper. I don't have that tool. I'm not even sure exactly what it is, but I assume it's some sort of a clamp or something that would push this down and seat it. So now what I'll do is just put this nut on. Now I will mention that the kit came with two nuts. I'm not sure why. I think this would be for some other application, but the larger of the two nuts seems to fit my application. So I'm going to run this down on here. That's as far as I can get it by hand. In order to tighten the nut down onto the idler, you can see I've got a 24mm wrench here on the nut, and I've got an 8mm Allen key in the middle to hold the stud. I'm supposed to tighten this down to 90 foot-pound. Now I don't really have a way to check that with this setup, so I'm just going to kind of have to go by feel, and I'm going to assume that tighter is better on this. I mean, obviously you could over-tighten it, but I don't think I'll be able to with this setup. I think I'm only going to be able to tighten it so tight, and that might not even quite reach 90 foot-pound, but we'll do our best here and get this as tight as I can. Okay, that's about as tight as I can get it, with the tools that I have. Hopefully it's tight enough. You can see that it's compressed this a little bit. There's a little bit of grease still seeping out of there, and just as a side note, I didn't show it on camera, but I did add a little bit of grease to here just to make sure that everything was full. And when I put a little bit in, it started to ooze out, so I knew that it was already sort of pre-filled at the factory. So hopefully you can see here that I've got the idler arm assembly back up in the truck, and I've got this sort of in the frame bracket. And what I'm going to do is just kind of move it up so that the top mounting flange lines up with the holes, and put the top bolt through just to hold it. Okay, so that'll hold that. Now I can put the bottom one through. So now I'll put the nuts on the back side. There's a washer that goes on first, And then this lock nut, there's a tapered side and a flat side. The flat side, of course, goes against the bracket and the washer. So I'll do the top first. Washer goes on first. And then I'll thread the nut on and get it as tight as I can by hand first. So now I'll do the same thing with the bottom one. Washer first. And then nut with the taper facing out or away from the bracket. So now I'm going to bring back my 13/16 wrench. Now of course this would be better with a 21mm wrench, but I don't have one, so I'm going to work with what I've got. This one fits, it's just a little tight. So now I'm going to snug this up with a regular ratchet first. Now because I'm not using the right wrench, it gets kind of stuck on these nuts. And I just got to work it off. So now that I have those tightened up for the most part, I'm going to come back with my torque wrench and torque them down to 73 foot-pounds. Now I'll set the torque on the bottom bolt. So here's what everything looks like fully installed. You can see the idler arm can pivot here, and it's all mounted in securely. One thing here that I forgot to do, and everybody probably noticed this, but I forgot to put the grease fitting in the top of the idler arm. So I'm going to go under the truck and do that now. But the rest of this hardware, this is the stuff that will mount the idler arm to the center link. And I'm going to set that aside for now. I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to put the Pitman arm on first. So I'm going to put this grease fitting on that I forgot to put on when this was out of the truck. And obviously this would be a lot easier to do when the idler arm is on the bench, but we can still do it here. There's plenty of room. I've swung it all the way over here so I have as much clearance as I can get. Okay, I think that's got it. Okay, hopefully you can see that there. I've got that all in and tightened up. And that went in harder than I thought it should have. It's in there now. Just give it one more crank. I don't need to add any grease to this. I could tell that from the factory this thing was packed with grease. Well, that's going to wrap up installation of the idler arm assembly on this 2004 Chevy Tahoe. If you'd like to see the next video that documents installation of the Pitman arm, you can find a link to it and all of the other videos in this series in the description below. I'll also have clickable thumbnails in the end screen, which will follow shortly. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to leave a comment or subscribe, feel free to do that as well. Thanks for watching.